there was people asked for it to come back. We sort of had a banter and chat night there about probably 3 weeks ago. And it was great success. It was just really a bit of crack and a laugh. It's very casual. It's a light-hearted thing. We won't throw any trick questions at you. We won't throw any allegiance questions at you and ask people to raise their hand and put their flag out or anything like that. We all know that Lee doesn't really follow football, so we won't get into any sporting questions. But it's really just basic and casual. The lads are really interested because obviously we've had a real succession probably over the last 10 years in fights where we've always had really strong novices. I would say in the last probably 10 years, we've had a selection of novice, the section and the novice section. As much as people would like to downplay the fancy and how the fights are going, and we've nearly always had a real strong five novice section, you know, like from the likes of Tom Campbell, Gary McBeat, and then we had like Jimmy Roberts. Jimmy Roberts would undoubtedly be one of the most successful novice fanciers that we've had in recent times. Here in Ireland, we had Emma McAteer, would have dominated the scene here as a novice for a long time. And then when Jimmy was always ran closely by Grimmer and Hornby, Sean and Fred. And then Jimmy went champion there about 2 years ago, I think, probably 2 seasons ago. And Jimmy and Fred really sort of took the mantle up and went after, and were obviously successfully. They were runners up in the 2018 financial year, 2019 financial year, and then they won it last year. So themselves and ABF Fife, like year ABF Fife won it. They won most shows. They were really, really dominant the year they won in 2019 themselves, and Gerard won it in 2019. And same, Gerard had dominated, and so had ABF Fife, and it was really, really strong. So it's really a progression of the fancy that we've seen, that yourself and Lee now would be two of the leading novice fanciers, with Grimmer and Hornby now becoming champion. This year is probably going to be more prevalent for you. Like, where did it start for you, Matt, getting into fights? How did you, like, are you from a board keeping family?
Yeah, no, I'm not, to be honest. I actually kept birds as a kid. So going back probably 10, 11, randomly, I had cockatiels right at the start. So I had an aviary with some cockatiels in as a young boy. And then I met a guy called Ray Birchall, who was a budgie breeder. I think he was novice at the time, a really, really lovely guy. So it got me into budgies. I exhibited budgies as a kid. I did that for probably 2 or 3 years. And then pretty much kept anything and everything that you could get hold of in like UK pet shops. So I literally, you name it, I bred it as a kid. You know, Java sparrows, lovebirds, foreign finches, quails, doves, canaries. I had everything. I did that for a number of years, and then probably got to about 14 or 15, and then sort of became interested in girls. And it wasn't very trendy being a young bird geek or a young bird keeper at the time. So unfortunately, the birds had to give. So I got rid of the birds at that point. So it was but I was really into it as a kid, and bred successfully pretty much everything I kept. So then sort of stopped and cracked on, and then bizarrely I sort of, well, not bizarrely, I was also quite into fish. So I had a lot of tropical fish tanks in my bedroom. So when I moved, I bought a house on my own at about 20. I'm 42 now. So when I was 20, I bought a house on my own. I got really into the fish, so I started breeding. I had an outhouse at the back. I had tanks everywhere. Very, very long story short, and bred angelfish and cories and all sorts of tropical fish. Then I went into discus and bred discus. And then I moved on to marines and corals. So probably for the sort of, I had the fifes now about 5 years, probably for the 10 years prior to that, I had reef tanks and corals and propagated corals. And actually it's quite a time consuming hobby, the marines and the corals. So I was quite sort of absorbed in that. And I did that for a while. Really, really into it, and then I sort of decided, right, I'd done what I wanted to do with that. I did a few magazine articles on propagating corals, and I was quite, I was pretty, I was well into it, and I just sort of decided I'd sort of done what I wanted to do, stopped it, and then I sort of had a bit of a gap, and I thought, right, I tell you what, so this is probably about 5-6 years ago. I thought I'd just get some birds without really. I thought canaries, but without really any sort of knowledge on the varieties. So I picked up a few random birds from all over the place, pet shop birds. I had some coloured canaries. I had fifes, I had all sorts, and then just got back into it that way. And then obviously started with them in the garage, and then got into it, and then met Jeff Hamlet, who was a sort of local champion breeder, a really good guy. Jeff, a great bird man. So I went and spent a bit of time with Jeff, and sort of just gravitated towards the fifes really. And I sort of cleared the decks then of the birds I had, and kept fifes. I did actually have, up until last year, I had a stud of red lipochromes and red ivory lipochromes as well, that I was quite into. I had quite a good stud of those birds, again because of a guy local, a fellow called Tony Case, who again is a fantastic bloke. He'd sorted me out some birds, but probably after the success of sort of last year and sort of getting into the fifes, I decided I needed the room, so something had to give. So I got rid of the reds just to concentrate on the fifes. So I've got nothing else other than fifes in the shed now. So it's about 5 years really, the sort of work in progress to get to this stage. But it was probably because of Jeff really, just meeting Jeff. Jeff lives in Widnes. He's only sort of 10 minutes from my house. So I got back into birds, and then that was it. And then like everything else, I'm sort of straight in and then built a bit, went from there.
Yeah, and then Lee, obviously, you hit the ground running probably the best I've ever seen anyone. Now, obviously, you had a busy life. You've done bodybuilding for a while. You were very much into keep fit. You still are quite fit, to be quite fair. You have a busy job. You have a young family. Is board keeping in you, or how did you all of a sudden get into
it? My dad used to raise pigeons, and he also used to keep boarders. So we've always had livestock. We had an allotment with chickens on there, with ducks on there, and I was always interested in that. My brothers and sisters weren't too bothered, but I didn't have enough money to be able to buy anything when we were kids. Like, we didn't have up for ourselves, and so I used to be down at allotment all the time. So we used to take the pigeons to, we take them to France to race back. My family's always raced pigeons. My dad and my dad's dad and his uncles and brothers have always raced pigeons and kept boarders and British. So as soon as I had a chance, had my own house, stuff like that, I wanted to do something for myself. And to be fair, I contacted Matt Eld, and I asked him about a few bits, and he put me in contact with a few breeders, one of them being Gerald. And then once I got into it and started watching Canary and started learning, I read Terry Kelly's book. I did all that like everyone does when you get started. It really like I was amazed by what people can do and the challenge of it. It's about the challenge to me. If I was just breeding birds for breeding's sake, I don't think I like the challenge of trying to get that shape, that that perfection in the bird, and trying to excel and produce that winning bird. I think that's one of the things that attracts me to it, because I like the competition. I think it's a great thing to be. I think I love that kind of thing. And it gives you motivation, because breeding birds, as you know, it's a lot of work, especially for when you're working 40, 50, 60 hours and you're putting 20 hours in shed in breeding season. So you've got to love it. Then I do. It's something I'm really passionate about.
Because you and Matt, sort of, the way it's set up, would probably sort of agree with my sort of standing that has been for probably years in the hobby, is that a hobby in general, we're targeting the wrong people, that we're trying to target youngsters, where I would have always felt that the problem with getting youngsters, like with Matt, they start to smell themselves, they start to find ladies, they're trying to find a career, they're trying to find a wife, they're trying to find nightclubs, and there's a huge distraction. And by trying to attract in younger folk, you also need a strong commitment from parents, because the parent is the one that's going to be doing the running around or the driving around, where I've always been that we should be targeting lads who are probably are settled in their career, probably settled in a bit of family life, probably can't be gallivanting as much. So by standing at the bottom of the shed, like bottom of the garden in a garden shed, there's a bit of an easier life, because there's a better life balance with your hobby, because you literally are at the end of the shed. Like I always said it, Sandra does always give me a hard time. the minute you hear Coronation Street music, you can hear my back door closing because I'm literally out the door and into the bird shed. The minute you hear the first, it's nearly the first two, nearly the first two tunes of the team tune. I'm gone out the door, out the back, because that's your sort of happy place, you know. Now, obviously, Lee, you've got your boards from arguably one of the best studs ever, in Gerard, and I don't think you could have really had a better mentor in the fancy, in the way of stockmanship, in the way of how he keeps his boardroom. You could literally, from what I've seen, go into Gerard's boardroom and you wouldn't find a dirty drink or a dirty seed hopper, even in the sink, never mind on a cage, like, no. And then having our own addition to the Kardashians, Matt, as a sort of like a sidekick, who's been around Gerard like a love child forever, you know. To have those two as the starting base for really where you start.
Can I just, for the benefit of the tape, can I just deny that I'm Gerald's love child?
Yeah.
Just for the benefit of the tape, please.
Yeah. Well, the name might not be on the birth certificate, but it doesn't mean you're not paying the road tax, you know. So in fairness, Lee, you have come into the fights with more enthusiasm than I could ever really have. We've seen in the fights. Like, your setup is, and between two of you, like, your setups are a credit to the fancy, you know. Like, Lee, last year you were like, just that last year alone, you won best novice at 4 shows, 4 specialist shows. You won best in show at Hull. You won 18 specials. You won 62 classes. Like, that's pretty phenomenal, to be fair. You seem to have dominated. Had you a clear buff hen, or was it clear buff hen you were, clear buffs you were seen to be cleaning up with, Lee, was it?
I won 5 shows out of 8, 5. And I won the clear section in all 8 shows. And it was clear buff hen, clear yellow hen. Those two seemed to do well for me. The clear buff hen won at the whole show, and then it won the clear section at Midland, which I was pleased about because Midland was tough. There were a lot of birds there. It was a very, very big show, a very successful show. I really enjoyed it, and I really wanted to win that, to be fair. And I had I think it was a 10% buff cock that came second to ABF 5s. But I was pleased with that, because to come second with 260, 300 birds, whatever it was, big numbers, maybe more, maybe 400 novice birds, I think it was actually. I was pleased with that. But yeah, I couldn't ask for no more in that season. I'll be honest with you, Paul, I didn't expect to win. I said to my dad, 2 or 3 specials, I'd be happy over the season, because I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, I know, but obviously from where you got your boards from, did you feel a bit of pressure that you had to sort of, like,
I did, yeah.
Like, if you're training with Usain Bolt, and then you come to the 100 meters and it takes you 25 minutes, people start to wonder, you know.
Yeah, I did, because there's a few reasons why, and one reason that, you know, you set yourself up to people want to beat you, they do. That's just way of life, and it's
nature.
Way of people.
Yeah, it's natural. Yeah,
it's just natural. So I knew that anyway, and also where the birds came from, people would expect me to do well, and they said that before, they'd expect me to do well, but I've never been to even a show. I've been to bird shows with my dad when I was younger, even pigeons and stuff like that, because he used to show pigeons. But I've never really seen it. And when I turned up and there were just hundreds of birds in cages, I thought, how can you beat this many birds? It's just ridiculous. You know, like, but, I mean, on it, the whole show's small, but 600-700 birds in cages. I'm thinking, fucking hell, how come? It's intimidating, you know.
It probably gives you a bit of respect. It gives you a bit of respect for judges, because you have 700 boards and you have to try and pick the best one. And as much as judges get a bit of stick when certain fanciers don't win or certain fanciers do win, it's not an easy job. You know, it's not an easy thing to do. And then Matt, same as yourself. Matt, you seem to have a very successful season last year. Obviously, you have family commitments and you don't show as frequently as you'd probably like. But like you still had exception last year. Like you won 27 classes. I mean, you had 9 specials. Just at the shows that I've reckoned, I couldn't have reckoned the ones after Walsall. So, but how did you find the season went in last year?
It was, you know, it was brilliant, Paul, because it was probably my first proper year showing. So I sort of kept the fives about 5 years and done it a slightly different way to Lee. And the way that Lee did it is a great way, probably a little bit more calculated than me. I sort of got into the fives and then I got the birds and then sort of stumbled through it and I bred birds that were okay. You know, I'd put a few birds in CBS shows the year before COVID, and then COVID hit the year I was going to really sort of have a crack. So last year was my first year really actually getting around the shows really and seeing the quality of bird that actually is out there. So it's been a little bit of a slower progress for me, but it's you know, I've sort of tried to blend a couple of lines together. Which takes a bit of time, but you know, I'm sort of confident. I said last year was a good year. It was another step forward, and I think, you know, the important thing for me is to progress each year. I think to see the quality improve each year.
Did the level surprise you? Did the level surprise you when you went to shows?
No, not really. And again, as you said with Lee, you know, he was obviously going to breed an outstanding quality of bird with the stock that he'd got. You know, ABF, who I knew nothing about until this year, you know, the birds they put on the bench were sensational. But again, they've been working on that for a long time. Fred and Sean, again, fantastic birds. So no, it didn't surprise me because I went in there with no real, you know, real
Expectations.
Expectation idea of what it was going to be like, and it was only sort of but to be honest, I enjoyed that, and again, that sort of stoked the fire a little bit with me, and to be honest, sort of put a bit of fire in my belly. As Lee said, you know, I love a competition, I love the crack, and ultimately you keep the birds because it's a great hobby, and you sort of put the long hours in on your own, and you do it. It's a labour of love, but you know, I like the fact that it's you know, it's a competition and you've got something to aim for. And ultimately, if you were turning up every week and winning every week, you know, it wouldn't be satisfying, I'm sure. So I think it you know, it was a solid year, a real you know, education in terms of where I thought my birds were and where I want them to be. You know, a few changes this year to try and hopefully take the birds forward again. So we'll see.
And coming into this year, obviously, from what we've seen, you've posted on social media. You're fairly active enough on social media. You share.
So because I've got a lot of birds that I need to move on, Paul. I'm trying to stoke a bit of business. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not.
Yeah, no. But
you know.
There's no harm in that either. But at the end of the day, you must be able to breed birds to be able to sell birds. Like at the end of the day, like as we touched on at the start, Lee has like an addiction. Lee, when he first set up his shed, me and Lee had spoke a couple of times over text, and we'd spoken a few times, and he's like Matt L. He's a bit of a magician when he has a 10x6 shed that looks like a 2-acre field, because he used every single space in his little shed.
It's like all about the angle of the camera, Paul.
Yeah,
you know that.
I know.
It's all about the angle of the camera.
But his shed was very impressive, and then he built another shed, and now he's built a bar that probably has cages in it in the winter and mounting out birds because there's not much bar in it. But your both your setups are quite impressive. Like I'm a bit OCD myself when it comes to my shed and my setup, but I probably didn't have a good enough setup as good as yours, probably for about 10 years in fives, probably. It's probably only the last 10, 11 years where like I've had a reasonably good setup. So both your setups are set up quite substantially. So in the way of breeding, Lee, in how many hens did you use this year?
I had about 33, 34 hens made this year. I know that some of them I were using for fostering almost because there wasn't at the standard I'd like. I'll be honest that last year when I look back, I had 5, 6 hens were the level I want them to be. And this year maybe I had 9 or 10. So it's a slow progress getting that quality that I'm really looking for. And I can get excited about what they're going to breed before they breed. But I kept a few feeders this year, just in case I can, pick a good hen, transfer the eggs over, and maximise the yield from. Like my best green yellow hen this year, I've had 11 young from. I have had my issues this year. There's been a few issues. I had a little bit of mite early on in season, which it didn't affect it massively, but I had a lot of dead in shell from it because they wasn't sitting correctly.
Okay.
So I bred just over 100 birds, which.
And where do you think that sort of came from? Or like some people would have an opinion that it comes in on bees, some would have an opinion that it can be in the seed. Where?
Yeah, I think if I'm honest, I live right next to a field as well, and there's a lot of allotments with livestock. It could have come last year. I didn't see a thing. I checked all the time because I was paranoid about it after I've been told people this, that, and the other. But I think if you can control it and catch it early on, which I did, I eliminated that and then managed to breed a decent number because sometimes it can devastate your breeding season. So I managed to eliminate that pretty early on, but it almost, my first round, it took what I could have got away. I'll be honest with you, but I was hoping to breed 120, 130. I didn't want massive numbers. I'm just trying to focus on quality and looking after them birds. And as you know, when you're working, you know yourself, if you've got frigging, even this year, probably next year, I might keep 25, 24 hens, I'll be honest, and keep that quality.
Yeah. And did you find it, was it much harder work than your first year? Your first year, you probably had a bit of a honeymoon period. It was every day was a smiling day. And then you realized this is did you find your second, were you over expectation of your second year? Like, how many did you keep in your first year?
I kept 20 hens first year and I bred 90.
So you nearly doubled. You went up like 50%. And was it like I've always found it's much harder work. Like I bred 92 this year from 15 hens. And a couple of years ago, not last year, before last, I kept 25 hens and it was bollock. It broke my heart. I got good numbers, probably 20 more than I have today, but I kept 10 more hens. Like it was hard work. And did you find your second year was a bit more of a learning curve?
Yeah, it was a learning curve, but I think that if I still put the work in, still put the effort in, I had a bit of bad luck with that, which that cost me big style in first round. The first round was shocking, but it wasn't the work, it was a disappointment when I got the mite. It caused me a lot of issues. It was more the fact that it knocked me back mentally, like, because I was so focused on breeding 120, 130 birds. I'm happy with that. I don't need any more. I want to be able to be a good stockman and breed enough birds that I can cope with, but breed that quality and still keep winning. I mean, last year to breed 90 and I bred, you only need one winner, but I'd have liked a few more. But the birds that are coming through this year are much stronger. And I think that's because I bred my own hens last year. It's hard to get good hens unless you get flighted, I think. So I kept the hens that produced last year. And then a lot of daughters that I produced, I kept those. And the birds that are coming from these 2 or 3 lines they're all separated off.
Yeah. And Matt,
the
same this year for you. Like, obviously, you bred a good number of birds last year. Like in the middle of COVID, there wasn't much really happening last year. And then this year, you'd seem to have an abundance of birds that, like, fairly problem-free, would you say? Or
Yeah, pretty much. But again, in terms of the shed, I was quite, I sort of started back with the birds about 5 years ago. I put some cages in the garage just to get back into it and sort of on one side of the garage. And I was saying to Lee, actually, a message the day he was talking about having mite. I'd literally only got them back that first year and had northern mite. And I've never seen anything like an invasion of northern mite, millions of them. And no matter what I did to try and get rid of the buggers, I couldn't. And that was literally straight back. In the end, I ended up just getting rid of, taking all the cage out, bleaching the cages, jet washing the whole thing, and starting again, and then bred a few birds. So I'd already learned that to a degree. So I'm sort of always really conscious about mite. And then obviously when I sort of built the new shed, I was able to build that from scratch really. So I was, as you said before, really, Paul, for me, a job that takes a lot of time and my attention, young family, 3 children, wife. So it was important with the new shed that I built that to try and the birds have sort of got to fit in with me, really, rather than the other way around. And probably some people might not sort of like to sort of hear that. But for me, for the longevity of, if I want to be breeding birds for the next 15, 20, 30 years, it's got to fit in with my lifestyle and my children's lifestyle and my wife's lifestyle and everything else. So with the shed, I was quite lucky. I could sort of build it from scratch, really. So I've got electric in there, I've got water in there. You've probably seen the video, but I've got a fridge in there, I've got a freezer in there. Everything is in there to make it as convenient as possible. And also, it's a relatively decent sized room. It's bright, it's airy. So the conditions were right, to start with, really. So in terms of breeding this year, I kept about 32 hens, 33 hens, with the idea of keeping 4 or 5 just in case, because the year before, kept about 24 the year before and got 104 birds. This year I thought I'd keep a few more in case certain hens don't breed, and just as luck would take it, they're just all pretty much bred. So I've had absolutely no issues at all, other than losing the odd youngster. But because I put that many hens down, I could move chicks about. Birds I've lost. First round, I bred an awful lot of darks, to the point that I was like, right, I might have an issue here moving all of these on. So I sort of, a lot of the dark hens, I only took 1 round off, and then went second round with all the rest. And I sort of finished off with just shy of 200 birds. But to be honest, I must have thrown away 60 eggs in the bottom where I've moved the hens into the flight cage afterwards. They were down again afterwards. It's just as I said, listen, I sort of don't, I don't count my chickens, excuse the pun, because you sort of never know what's around the corner. There's always bumps in the road. But this year's pretty much gone. Gone seamlessly, really.
Yeah, I could probably sort of concur with that. I used to say to lads, and I spoke to Dave Collins today. Me and Dave Collins had a bit of a chat with Dave Collins today, and he was the same opinion as me, that this year for me was just feed the birds, let them breed. They fed the youngsters, they fed the chicks, they reared the chicks. If Carlsberg done breeding seasons, this year was mine. I just seemed to just go out in the morning, sweep the floor, change the water, put some seed, change the egg food, out the job, back again in the afternoon, and it just seemed to work. And just touching on a point there, when you build your boardroom, when I built my new one, well, it's not new, it's probably have 4 or 5 years. I built it for more my comfort as much as the birds. So I'm the same as yourself. Mine is controlled by Alexa. I have a fridge, I have a freezer, ventilation. I have a fish tank in there just for something a bit different. And I think sometimes we overlook the fact that we will spend 20, as Lee said, he'll spend 20 or 30 hours a week in a shed. So I think it's probably the comfort of you going in there and having a nice shed, just for the birds as well as yourself. Like if your radio, it probably makes the season a bit easier. Was there anything you done differently this year than you did last year?
Sorry, Paul, you just broke. Then say that again, mate.
Yeah, just saying, was there anything you done differently this year than you did last year?
Me or Lee? Me.
Yeah, Lee. Yeah. Sorry, Lee.
No, no, not really. If I'm honest, no, exactly. No, didn't change anything. Just exactly the same process, the same egg food mixtures. And again, as you said, pretty much all the hens they reared. As I said, the only issues I got was maybe a nest where there was a small chick that I could see was struggling a little bit and moved it out. Even the year before, I think out of the sort of 24 hens the year before, I had one hen suddenly at 10 days. All laid and all reared at the same time. So I probably got 9, 10 nests at one time, all of the same age. So I could sort of move and shuffle about, which it's allowed me to sort of maximise the amount of birds that that are bred. But in terms of the processes, and I'll go on a little bit more about that in a minute. But I pretty much did exactly the same as I did the year before, really, and got a good result.
Yeah, and obviously, Lee, you've touched on there. You had a bit of a problem there with some mite on that, Lee. Did you do anything different this year than you did from your first year? Because your first year yielded good numbers too, Lee.
Yeah, I didn't. It would, I did everything that everyone else does. I use the front line. I usually have a ivermectin. I'm clean once a week, not even once every 2 weeks. Once a week, I clean those cages out. Only thing I changed is I went to plastic cages for breeding rather than wooden, which shouldn't really make a difference. There was no real difference in what I did. I think sometimes it can just, don't matter how clean you are, if you might want to get in there, they can get in there. So I thought it might have been something to do with cleanliness. The amount of times I clean, I spend ridiculous hours cleaning shed. It can take me all day, 10, 11 hours. But I will say that one thing about breeding such a tight stud, like Gerald is such a tight stud, Gerald never breeds massive numbers. He breeds 130, 132, 128, 135. It's never massive numbers. And I think, as you know yourself, if any animal or any bird or anything, or if you breed that tight for that long, you're almost inbreeding. It can affect the numbers, or it can affect different things in different ways. I think the really tight studs that have been going a long time, they struggle to get those numbers. If you keep bringing in new birds, keep bringing in fresh birds, you can probably get that up. But for the quality wise, I think the tight studs seem to be able to keep producing that
quality year in year in,
in my opinion.
Yeah, and then this year, Lee, obviously,
I think it's.
Yeah, and then obviously, Lee, this year with your line of work, you've done a bit of work on sort of bird nutrition.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit, and what I did is I sold my business and started a new job, which it didn't really make much difference with birds and stuff like that. But I started looking a bit on, what birds require naturally to be able to breed and be able to have, shell stuff like that. And when I've looked at it, I've just slightly changed my egg food recipe, which I was getting more full eggs and I was getting solid shells. I had no soft shells. All of that were coming, but with the mite, they wasn't sitting tight. So what I found is, during the process of incubation, I was getting dead in shell. And when I've looked, even at the odd mite, like the few mites, if they're not sitting tight, they're getting up because they're getting bit or whatever it is on a night, it can cause an issue. And I think that was my issue. And also, getting the humidity right. I've got a machine that pumps humidity in the air and stuff like that, but it can get warm. But I think it was a mite that was the main problem. The nutrition were right, the food were right. It was similar to last year. Just added a few bits just to get everything right. But what I noticed is I didn't get any eggs at all that were soft shell. All the birds were laying 4 eggs. Everything else went well. It was just that one hiccup, which it took me 4 or 5 weeks to rectify because.
And in fairness, you bounce back because it's hard. As you said, like it's a brilliant hobby. You love it, but you can get kicked in the balls, like, and it can be disheartening, like especially for someone who puts so much time into the hobby like yourself. When you get a kick in the balls the first round, it can deflate you a small bit. So, for you to be able to come back and recover the second round, and did you go a third round for some hens?
Once I started struggling, I started asking questions because, you panic a little bit. And when you put so much effort and time into something, you're so passionate about something, you start to try and rectify it quickly. And I spoke to Gerald and spoke to Adam, asking questions, this, that, and the other. And, and I got a lot of help. And I'd listened and I did that. And then that's what made me breed as many as I did, when really I would have probably bred half of that if I wasn't careful, because I wasn't getting to that. I was just getting, it was eating me up, not being able to produce the birds. I was just thinking, I've got no chance here. I like 20 birds. I bred 20 birds, 30 birds, and everything seems to be going wrong. Yeah. So to get 100, I'm really pleased. Really pleased.
Yeah. And Matt, obviously you've had an exceptional season. You've bred 200 youngsters. What do you hope to achieve in the coming show season? Obviously, we're coming out well out of the pandemic now, and we're going to have a full show season. Last year it was slightly curtailed later in the year. We lost East Anglia, we lost a couple of shows, but this year we're we're back to pre-2019, back to full shows. There's plenty of new clubs. There's plenty of activity around, both Fed and Council. They both seem to be doing fairly well. What's the aspirations coming into this season?
Well, so I think just going on to the point of Lee's about nutrition, just quickly, Paul. See,
Yeah.
I'm not. See, I'm quite the opposite. I don't worry about that at all, because for me, I think the birds want to rear, they'll rear. My egg food mixture, it was as simple as pearl bead, peas, broccoli, and egg food. That was it. Nothing else. No snake oils. No, nothing else in there at all. And then soak seed. And that is literally. I didn't put anything else in there. Another thing that I was going to say that I have used for a couple of years and really found the benefit of it is Unifeed, LOR Unifeed. I used that. I started using that a couple of years ago, and the hens absolutely love the stuff. And you sort of put it in, it goes in on the side as a dry, so it doesn't go off like egg food. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've had success this year, or a big part of it, it's certainly helped towards it, is that they've got the seed, they've got the LOR, the Unifeed, they've got their egg food. And you know, it's like you put the egg food in the morning, they're all over the egg food straight away. And then very, very quickly they get bored of the egg food. And then when the Unifeed is there, then they start stuffing their faces with the Unifeed, and then they'll put a bit of fresh egg food in. And that process of keeping them sort of interested, I think, played a big part in sort of, and it has done for the last couple of years in terms of me breeding so many chicks. Now, you know, it might just be coincidence, but I found it to be an absolutely brilliant product that I've used.
So Unifeed is like a dry egg food mixture, is it like?
Yeah, it's a dry egg food mixture, and there's different. There's molt and there's maintenance and there's breed, and to be honest, I've only used it. The mistake I made about 2 or 3 years ago with this product is I left it in all year for the birds. And what I found is the in between, when they'd finished the molt and between sort of getting through to the breeding season, the hens absolutely gorged on it. So I ended up with a load of hens a lot more like Christmas turkeys than 5 canaries. So I now sort of I use it for the molt and I use it for breeding, and then I sort of take it away. So a couple of weeks before getting ready to breed, I'd sort of introduce it. And the hens absolutely love the stuff. And for me, it's just a real, you know, it's the fact that you can put it on dry, the egg food, you can put the egg food in, especially like now when the weather's warm, it starts to go off a little bit. And sort of I'd go in the morning, 7 o'clock, and then my missus will go in once in the day, twice in the day, put a bit of food, and I'll go in at night, and they're straight on the egg food, but sort of keeping the hens interested all of the time. For me, the Unifeed is a really, really useful product. And I think that's helped for me. And also, and again, I'm no expert on nutrition, but I sort of look at the nutrition and the composition of the Unifeed. It's got all the probiotics, it's got the vitamins, it's got the minerals, it's got everything in that I sort of need. So I don't put anything in the water. I don't mess with vitamins. I don't mess with calcium. I don't do anything else other than Unifeed, my egg food mixture. That, as I said, I put nothing else in. And same as Lee, I've had no issues with. I've not had one soft shell this year. I've had no dead in shell. But again, I sort of keep an eye on humidity. More. My shed's not too bad because it was more sort of keeping it dry. Than actually sort of keeping the humidity high. So, but even sort of second round when humidity was sort of 40 to 50 to 55, I had no issue with dead in shell. So, you know, I think it's the other thing is what I think it's you find a system that works for you and you stick with that system and you don't change things. And again, for me this year, a lot of the birds were bred in that shed, so the use of the environment, and it's not been an issue. So literally for me, that has been the process. To be honest with the pearl. Again, I think that's an absolutely brilliant product. Pearl. Is it Mabide?
Pearl and Mabide, yeah, Pearl and Mabide.
You know what? They absolutely love the stuff, and I actually think I could have got away with the Unifeed, Pearl, and egg food, and I reckon I could have got away with that. I know they like the broccoli, they like the pea, but they love the pearl. I'm gonna
ask you quite a contentious question, and it's one that myself and Graham Davis have sort of. We've had many a heated discussion over. I'll be telling you, it's quite contentious. It's nearly as contentious as whether Johnny beat that young lady or whether it was Amber Heard. We don't know. It's as contentious that. Do you give the birds grit or do you not give them grit?
I do not give them grit. I never have done.
Can't believe it. You let me down. Do you want to phone a friend? Do you want to phone a friend, man? Because over the last year and a half, 2 years of doing these Zooms, it's been quite a contentious subject, whether you give the boards grit or not. Some lads give it like I give it. I've given it for 20 years. Does it do any good? I don't know. But I've always given it, it doesn't seem to do them any harm. But myself and Graham Davis are pioneering us to find out who gives them grit and who doesn't. He's smiling there in the background, but we've always had a bit of a dig about that, you know. So going forward, really, into this season, it's I'm not asking you to be Mystic Mac and try and predict, but where are you going to pitch your tent this year? Lee, we'll go to Lee first.
My goal is the same as last year, to be competitive. So
you sound like Gary McBeat. You sound like Gary McBeat when he's talking about West Ham. Come on, punch the test. Come on, none of this. I'd like to be competitive. Are you going to try and beat last year? Are you going to try and beat last year?
Every show I go to, I want to win. I don't go to a show to lose. I want to win. I don't just want to win the special. I want to win the best novice, and that's my goal. I'm not going to lie. It's, the specials are great, and I want to win as many as I can. I won't cover all the colours because it's a work in progress. But I'll be strong in the greens. I'll be strong in the clears, 10%. Variegators. I've got some good cities coming through. I've not many allied to whites, but my goal is to win every show I go to. I want to win. If I don't, I'm disappointed. But I crack on. I learn from it.
Do you know what, Lee? It's the reason why I like you, and I've always liked you, is that you're just honest. Do you know what I mean? There's so many lads will come on here and go, "Oh, I'm in the hobby because I like to make friends and all." Yeah, that's great, but it's great. There is competitiveness, and you want to win. I love the freshness of the fact that you just sit there and go, "No, lads, I want to smash you and have a pint with you afterwards." It's just the way I want to be. I want to win everything, and come outside and have a pint in the Witherspoons, you know. And I think it's very refreshing to hear. Like you're going into your second year, and you want to win, everything. I just think that's great. Matt may sit on the fence and say that like he's happy if he wins a bag of seed in the raffle, because so it's great. It really is, and Lee, I have to say it's great to hear that you want to win, because you've done enough of it. So so that's where you want to be. You want to win every show.
Yeah, I want to be. I want when I go to a show, my hopes are that I'm going to win it. And if I don't, I'm disappointed. Last year, the shows that I didn't win, if I asked where I came, and I came second in 2 shows, and I was really happy with that, with the amount of birds there. And this year, I know, there's not just me and Matt. There's other novices that are going to be in contention. Of course, there's plenty. But I think it's going to be a tough race. But my goal is I won't put all this effort in just to drive 4 hours just to go and get beat every week and think that that's going to happen. I've got to believe that I'm going to win. Otherwise, I won't be able to put the hours in that I do. Yeah.
And then we go across the mat now. And now, Matt, you have to come out fighting here now. You can't be saying that you'll be happy enough you win the seed raffle now. Come on.
Listen, mate. If I can hang old Westerman's tail and just listen, I mean, look, we'll see. But as Lee said, you always want to. You don't enter a show to lose. You enter a show because you think you've got the birds that are capable of winning. I don't think you talked about Jimmy Roberts before. I don't think many novices would be in the position that I'm in, that they would come up against somebody like Lee Westerman, who almost immediately has been able to produce birds of such a high standard. I went to, when I went down to Hull, so again very early last year, I went to Hull, and Lee's the first show that Lee actually went, and I actually remember I spoke to Adam Kennel on the way, and I went, "Fuck me, mate, you need to sort me out some birds, because this fella's going to take some fucking beast, and excuse my French."
Well, just to give you a bit of a tip there, I've bought boards off Adam Kent the last 3 years, and I haven't even won the bag of fucking seed at the raffle. So don't be pitching your don't be pitching your tent there. There's a reason why he's in the Maldives. There's a reason why he's in the Maldives today, and I'm in Rathhout, and it's sunny. Like, there's a reason,
Yeah, so we'll we'll see. But yeah, I want to compete. And to be honest, I'm pleased with the stand of the bird. And look, I've got a lot of birds. You'd expect there to be quality in there, but I think there's a real good number of quality birds as well. So again, similar thing I at least said before. Too many birds this year. I've got too many birds in the shed at this stage. I am not going to keep more than sort of 20, 24 maximum hens next year with a view to breeding. I brought 140 rings this year, and that was the target originally, and just blew that out of the water, and they just kept going. I think 100, if you can get to the point that you're producing, good numbers, good quality birds, it's about quality, not quantity. So I think, to be honest, one thing that this year will have given me is the opportunity to be really ruthless and keep only the really, really exceptional birds, and said that they're all of a small percentage. Obviously, we'll go a pet shop, but 90% of them are a really, really good standard. The birds that manage to stay in the shed for next year will be right up there. So again, it's only going to the study's only going to get stronger year on year. So it might take me a couple of years, but we'll get there.
We'll get there, yeah. And then, we're going to open it up to the floor in a few minutes. So any lads who want a question, you can just stick your hand up, and I'll get to you. Then we can go around sort of an orderly manner, because obviously it could turn into chaos in 5 minutes. So just go back to Lee there. It's great, Lee. Obviously, you want to win every single show, but if there was a tip you were going to issue to any novice coming into the fancy today, Lee, even as a second year, you would be a second year that has a 5-year plan to sort of degree. But any sort of tips for young people coming into the fancy in general? Because I don't always like to say young people, because people in their 40s will still have 40 years service in the hobby. It's a hobby that doesn't go out of date. You don't all of a sudden get too old to do it. You can stay. So in the way of you, Lee, coming in, is there any sort of learning curve you could offer to anyone experienced and unexperienced fanciers and coming into it, Lee?
Yeah, what I say is, if you're thinking of a shed as big as you can afford, because you always want bigger. I had to build another shed because my shed was too small. That would have stayed. But then go to the best breeders. Don't particularly look at the ones that do some research. Look at the birds that are winning, the birds that are progressing, the birds that you want to breed. And then, I went to Gerald's once a week for 12 months. And sometimes you just pick small pearls of wisdom up, especially with pairings. Pairings is the most difficult thing in the world. Forget about breeding. If you don't pair them together, you're just breeding, you're breeding lots of birds. You've got to get the pairings right. You've got to know the bird. You've got to love the bird. You've got to watch what's winning, look at what's winning the show bench. And if you're going to buy birds and there is shows going on and you wait until October, then go to shows, look what's winning, speak to everyone. It's all about knowledge. Go to these guys that have been breeding for 10, 15, 20 years. You can learn off everyone. There's something you can learn off everyone. That's what I say to them. And I'd also say, it's a fantastic hobby. It's a fantastic hobby. Politics aside, it's brilliant. I won't do anything else now.
Yeah, I'm the same. And Matt, any sort of words of wisdom for lads joining in?
No, not really. So, same sort of thing. Again, Lee's done it a different way to me. I mean, there's no shame in getting a couple of, just getting some birds and breeding them and sort of learning your trade. That's what I did, and then decided that I wanted to breed a better standard of birds, and sort of cleared the decks and started again. So obviously, what Lee has done is immensely successful. And to a degree, I've done similar, but over a number of years, obviously bringing in quality birds to try and improve the quality of the stud. But, for me, it was just a case of getting some birds, breeding some birds again, learning about it, a few pitfalls, and then moving on from there. But, ultimately, Lee's right. If you want to compete straight away at the highest level, you need to approach, a good local breeder, whether that's a good champion, and sort of work with them. The other thing I would say that, again, Lee's more than me to a degree is don't have birds from all over the show, lines from all over the show that you then sort of don't know what you're producing and what's going to come out. My line now is pretty consistent. The baseline was from Jeff originally. big Kendall influence right the way through the shed now, to be brutally honest. And I sort of don't deviate away from that. You know, and if you do that, you know you're going to start producing a pretty decent quality of bird. Have you got me a beer? Yeah.
Yeah.
The kids have come in. They didn't even bring me a beer.
Yeah. I just have my young lad. I just text downstairs. Any chance we know kind of Coke Zero? We're starting to go dry. Yeah, we'll probably open up to the floor there if anyone wants any questions of the lads. Really, like, I don't know whether we'll see there now.
Don't all shout out.
Graham Davis, you always have a question. Graham, you always have a question, Graham. Let's see if Graham Davis will kick in there.
Cheers, man. Go on.
Yeah, I was wondering what colour sections do they aim to cover over the next showing season? Do you aim to cover as many as you can, or you just want to go for your clears or variegated or greens or alloyed to white? You know, or do you
Lee,
just
do you want to go first?
For me, the clear section, obviously, I'm really pushing towards, and I've escalated into greens as well, because last year my greens weren't very strong. I had a green end that were brilliant, one two shores, but the rest of my greens were pretty much average, and I've managed to breed some good greens this year. 10% as well. I almost class them as same as clears. They sort of come from the same line. And variegators, I don't think I'll be from this year, so I'll be aiming at the clears and the greens, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it was more a way of, usually I have a couple of pairs of clears, a couple that are going to produce me some 10% variegated, and I've got a few blues and a few cinnamons. So it was more a question of you're sort of pairing them up to breed a particular colour or section, you know. I mean, your 10% are likely to come from your clears anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, so what I do is, when it comes to cockbirds, to be honest, I use a lot of clear cocks. I don't tend to use variegators or 10%. Use the ends to produce them. So if I can, if I've got the quality, it's all down to what I've got. I only breed, I just pick the best birds and use them to breed with, regardless of colour. I just want to produce the best bird I can.
Yeah, that was the point, really. Yeah, it's no good having a second class 10%er if you've got a better one that's clear. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I did. All I did was I looked at the best birds I had. I got advice from a lot of people. I spoke to Gerald, I spoke to Adam, and they came down and gave me the opinion on my pairings, because I'm learning. I'm completely learning. I'm a complete novice. I've had 1 year. I've got good stock. I've got good birds, but it don't mean nothing if you don't do it year after year after that. So I got a lot of advice, and a lot of things that I did were right, but some of the things I did were wrong, and they corrected me. So without them, I probably won't be able to get to hopefully to the next level of it years to come. You need them mentors that are going to guide you through, people with experience that have been breeding birds for 15, 20, 30 years.
In terms of me, in colours, a little bit, as Lee said, first priority is breeding best to best, regardless of colour, really, and that's the way I've tried to do it. But as I said earlier, I did have quite a nice sort of red Lipiquems and red ivories that have now gone, so I only have 5 in the shed. I've got 120 cages. So for me, if I'm just going to keep fifes, I want to try and keep as many of the colours as I can, and try and do as well as I can right the way across the board. So this year I've sort of put quite a lot of focus and effort on the cinnamons and the fawns. To be honest, my probably my weak link is Lee's strength is the clears. My clears won't touch Lee's, but the cinnamons, the greens. I had some good greens last year. I bred a lot of greens. I think it's about best to best first and foremost, and sort of seeing what comes out. But ultimately, for me, my long term ambition is to cover all the colours and the classes. That's the ultimate. And as I said, there's no British, there's nothing else in the shed. I'm just concentrating on the fifes. So for me, I want to strengthen the clears and sort of build on the clears, but it's cover as many as I can.
Yeah. And Lee, this year you obviously tried a few British. How did they go?
Yeah, we did all right. I didn't concentrate loads on them, I'll be honest, because my main goal was the fives, and I've bred some red poles, I've bred some siskins and stuff like that. I only had a few pair, and it was more of the fact that I've got one of my sheds is basically a nursery where I moved the birds to once they've been weaned, and I kept a few pair in there, and I did enjoy them. But if I'm honest, I agree with what Matt said, and next year I'll just be keeping fives, and the reason being is I really want to focus on them. I really want to lift them, and the competition in the novice is really, really lifting, and everybody wants to win. People have bought birds in and brought birds in to compete, to be at that level and to really have a go at it, which is brilliant. So I know if I want to be up there and challenging, then I'd really need to focus on what I'm doing. So next year, like Matt said, it'll just be fives, because I want to be at that level. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, well, it's a matter of just for you to progress this season from last season, you need to really put the effort in there. And in fairness to you, we see it all the time. I've spoken to you on numerous occasions. Your enthusiasm for the hobby, just like Matt's and many of the new people into the hobby, it's second to none. And I have to commend you for your effort in both use the way you handle yourselves in your boardrooms. Your boardrooms are absolutely impeccable. Like they really are. And the effort and time with having young families, like your young lad is probably about 12 or something, is he, Lee? He's probably 10 or 12.
Yeah,
yeah. And then, as Matt said, he's 12, 10, and 3. So he's fairly busy now. So if there was a show you want to win, what's the one you want to win, Lee? What's the one you want to win? Do you want to win Midlands? What do you want to win?
Midlands, 100%. That's I'm gunning for that.
Yeah. There's only one novice has ever won it back to back. Who was that?
There's two novices who won it back to back.
Who won it back to back?
ABF fives won it back to back.
Oh, he won this year, yeah, sorry. And then Gary McBeat.
Gary McBeef, yeah. And in fact, do you know what's his name? One of the guys in ABF fives, he won his own the year before that, and he won it there. So they've actually won it 3 times on bounce. It's his bird, won it 3 times on bounce.
Dean Ashton.
Yeah, Dean Ashton's won it 3 times on bounce.
Yeah, he's going champion now, isn't he? They're going champion.
Yeah, he's done champion and Grim and Norway gone champion. So that frees it up a little bit. That a lot of people now can try and lift up and take the challenge on, because they both are great birds, really good, especially for me. AB, the birds, size wise, they were pushing the boundaries of size. Really, well.
Yeah. Dan Ashton, his name is. Yeah, he'd a fawn hen that I think won Midlands Best Novice the last night. It was absolute. It was like a silver fawn. I always looked at nobody. There's sort of 2 fawns. We're always saying there's a blue lead fawn or a silver lead fawn. He had a blue lead fawn, sort of feathered fawn, and it was nearly touching on silver. And it won the Midlands. It won the Midlands the year Harry Clark won it with a clear yellow cocker.
That year that he did some winning, I think they won 5 or 6 shows. They won it mainly with like fawns or allied to whites and cinnies.
Yeah.
When I looked at, it wasn't the clears, it wasn't the greens winning it. It was the colours that we'd expect to be lower size classes. It don't mean take anything away from it, because when it comes to the best bird, you've got to compete against everyone. But yeah, I went through all the records and read it all, and I looked who's been winning. I've seen the champions that have won. I've seen the people that have done the damage, and I did a lot of research. And I like stuff like that. I like seeing who's done what. I can read through it forever.
Yeah. Do you think the time is gone? Do you think the time is gone now? Where we have specialist colour breeders. Do you think that time is coming to an end? Because obviously, like Frank Sanderson for probably 10 years of his prime, 10 or 12 years ago. Like Frank has only one show in the last 7 or 8 years, 9 years, for clears. But do you think the time is gone where we have specialist breeders? Like the prime example is Gerard. Gerard predominantly was a green breeder, and then someone made that all he could breed was greens, and he decided to abruptly come back and change that.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the ones that specialise in colours, it's more, there's 1 or 2 of the older generation that have been for years. I think you look at the novices coming through, there's no specialist, and I think that it can be boring. You know, keeping 25 clear ends to breed clears. I think that, you know, yeah, you are going to win some shows, but they still get beat. People can still beat them with good studs, and they will get beat. And you know, they'll have 9 ends at a very high standard, but you can only have one that beats them.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think if you're in partnerships as well, I think you find that you get more specialists. You got one of the partnership will specialise in the clears, one will be the darks, one will be the cinnamon. So I think like Lee on his own and me on my own, you know, I couldn't imagine just a shed full of greens or a shed full of clears or a shed full, you know, for me, if I'm just going to focus on the five, so I want to try and breed as many colours as I can. But as I said, ultimately quality is the most important thing. But if you're in partnerships, then it sort of makes sense that you would do that. So I don't think you've seen the end of it by any stretch of the imagination. But I think, as Lee just said, I think many of the novices coming through, you know, you'd want to try and breed as many as you can. You'll obviously have an area that you'll be stronger than others. And as I said earlier, Lee will dominate on the clears again. You know, no doubt about that. But you know, there's you know, I think you know, having that mix is important. Really, it certainly keeps it interesting. Keeps it interesting for me anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anyone else got any more questions to ask the lads? Anyone else come in? I think we've probably racked all the information we sort of can out of these lads. In fairness, thanks very much for coming on. It's
I
been
think
really.
Shane wants to come in. Shane wants to come in.
Oh, Shane.
Yeah, I was going to ask them both. What is the plans for next year, breeding wise? Because me personally, I'm already thinking for next year. Are you going to carry on as you are, or see how you won the show bench first before you judge what you do for next year?
No, for me, yeah, I think you know, not sort of get beyond myself. I think, as I said earlier, it is you know, building a stud of any pedigree, birds, cats, dogs, anything is a long-term project. So ultimately, you know, I think I said earlier, for me, all that's important is progression. And you know, the top champions haven't got a shed full of birds that are to the standard. You know, for me, I've got pictures of the standard on the shed. That is what I'm working towards. That is what I'm focusing on. As long as the birds keep improving, and I expect them to do that, because obviously, you know, I'm going to keep the stronger birds year on year. So we'll see how they get on the bench, and then go again next year. But you know, I would hope, if it gets to the point, especially so early in my stud, bear in mind, as I said, it's four years in, really. You know, if it starts to plateau at 4 or 5 years, then I've got a problem. I'll probably sort of have a think I'm not quite doing something right. I think if you get to the point that, you know, you're 10, 15 years in and you're plateauing, then you can maybe understand it. But I think, you know, certainly as a novice, it's just about improving every single year, keep improving, keep, you know, working on the birds, getting the birds better and better. So I think see where they go this year. But again, I sort of, you know, I said I steady here last year. I knew the birds would be stronger this year, and I think I'm confident the birds will be even stronger next year and the year after and the year after, because that's the way you sort of look at it. And if they're not, you're not pairing right, or you're not doing something right. So, you know, this year, you know, if I have a similar sort of year as last year, fantastic. But, you know, the birds will be stronger again another 12 months. A year before, sort of, you know, 3, 4, 5 year projects. Takes time.
I think I'm similar, and what I try and aim for is, regardless of number, I try and look at the percentage of birds that I really like to how many I've bred, and I've separated 12 off, and that's it. Because the rest, I can't make my mind up whether to separate them off or not. And the reason being is because I want to try and get the better birds. Now, last year, I'll be honest, I didn't have much idea until they were nearly through the molt. This year, I probably didn't have any idea as well, but I'm looking at them, and if I like them, I like the way they stand. I like, you know, the things I look for early on is that, like, you know, the nip in the neck and the way they stand. And then after that, the under feather comes through and the bird can develop. But as it goes for next season, it'll be the same as this season. Keep the better birds regardless of colour. I won't be interested if I just bred 3 colours, as long as the birds were at an high standard. I could get that shape and that standard. And then I really want to do what Matt said and get all the colours, but it's more difficult at the minute for me, because I haven't got them birds to colours, and I won't keep a bird just to get the colour in. I have got a few of each colour that'll do all right, but I haven't got the numbers. So I hope that's a work in progress. I can do that over time. But for now, I'm focused on the colours where my quality is. And hopefully I can progress to them. I do want to cover all the colours. But for now, like I said, just 3-4 colours I'll cover next year competitively. And I'll have the odd cinnamon to throw in, and hopefully, it might do all right.
To be honest, quite interesting you said that. To be honest, questions for sort of some of you guys, the more experienced guys. Sort of what I've done is, because I've bred so many birds at the minute, I would like to start singling and pairing them off, but it's just hard work. There's so many of them, so I've got them in almost long flight cages, 6-7 cages, and they're in batches of sort of 14s, 15s in those cages. I'll probably start to single them off. He's go on holiday in August for 2 weeks. So by the time we get to the end of August, I'll probably then start to maybe put them in pairs or single them off then, just to give them time. But I'm sort of taking a bit of a chance that I'm not going to lose the odd flight or the odd tail feather. But again, it just sort of makes it a bit easier for me in terms of managing them. But I don't know really whether they should be sort of single off and double off. But the other thing in my mind is that I like to see them have a bit of flight. And last year I singled them off a bit earlier, but I didn't have as many birds. But I think, to be honest, I like to see them open the wings up and be able to fly. I know obviously as we get near to the show, just to get them on the bench, you sort of want to calm them down and slow them down in single cages. But I suppose the risk, as I said, is that I might lose the odd really good quality bird. Might lose a flight or a tail, but we'll see. I don't know whether that's the right way of doing it or the wrong way of doing it, really, if I'm honest.
I think if I jump in on that, Matt, I think the right way is what works for you, mate. I think I've singled birds off. I've had with some of the fifes. I think as the bird becomes smaller, you bring the bird down. One of the things that's really hard to bring down is the wings.
Yeah.
I think if we look at our birds, we can, and if we're critical with our birds, we can say, we can shorten the bodies, we can keep the neck, we can get the position, but the wings are hard to pull down in size. And one of the things I'm doing this year is actually leaving all of the birds in flight cages, and I probably won't move them into single cages until September. Steadiness is, you can train a bird, but it's bred into it. The wildest bird, I speak as a man who's benched fifes that have looked like linnets on the show bench because they haven't steadied down at all. You breed that steadiness in, so a couple of weeks in the Siskins, cheers, Ad. Kendall's beasting me on Messenger. But I would do what works for you, mate. And one of the things is it's interesting because I've obviously, as many of you will know, the Canary Room is an eclectic mix of different varieties.
I'm more to I think.
Yeah. But one of the things that I've learned on my travels from speaking to people who've forgotten more about birds than I'll ever know, and in particular the time with Keith is, think about the big Norwich bulky birds he's got. They're in flight cages now, and they will be almost right up until the show season, just to keep the strength in, to keep the strength in the wings so that they hold themselves. So I would, I have done historically. I've singled mine off, and I know last year I had a couple of birds that just didn't have that wing strength, and it just, it really impacts the overall shape of the bird.
Yeah,
and there is a risk.
Yeah, I think looking at the sort of, again, it sort of works for me because I want to make it. It's been obviously a bit intense with all the chicks and everything else, and obviously with the family. You want to spend a bit of time with the family and go on holiday with the family and everything else. So it does work for me for them to be in flight cages for now. At the minute, there doesn't appear to be flights or tails that are getting nicked. But what you will find is as they sort of develop that pecking order within the flight cages, they'll lose a few feathers on the back and a few rump feathers. So question is, if I separated them off in, let's say, end of August, early September, when I get back from 2 weeks away, how long is it going to take feasibly for them to sort of get those back feathers back to a condition?
6 weeks.
Right, 6 weeks. So you've got enough time. So even if I throw them in September, there's enough time for them to sort of polish themselves up.
Yeah.
As long as they don't look like a tail.
Yeah. And one of the things, I mean, sort of twice weekly, whatever, I'll put, because I've got mine in an 8-foot flight cage at the moment. Got to make sure it's not overstocked, but I'll pop once a week, sort of big cob of broccoli in both sides, so it's not just one feeding station. And that's something I'm quite conscious of. So in the flight cages, I'll double up. I'll put 2 or 3 baths on, 2 or 3 feeding stations for egg food, 2 or 3 feeding stations for green food, half a Savoy cabbage, and then quartered. Bang that in there just to give them something to. Whether it stops them pecking the other birds or not remains to be seen. But it kind of seems to keep them interested. I think the danger becomes if you've only got, I think 4 or 5 different drinking stations in there. There's 7 seed stations in there. So you're thinking all the time, they'll pull feathers when they're squabbling. So you're thinking all the time, if you can give them enough choice, then actually there will be a pecking order. There naturally is whenever you put birds together. But if there's multiple feeding stations and multiple drinking stations and multiple bathing stations, then you are minimizing the amount of squabbles.
Yes,
and that's the way I do it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And to be honest, I tend to find, some of them are in smaller groups of 4s and 5s, and they seem to be all right, but you'll get 1 or 2, one boisterous one that then I just have to move out. It tends to be a young cockbird that's getting a little bit overexcited and a little bit boisterous, and I just tend to sort of move that out and gives others a chance. But I think if I've got sort of, as I said, an end of August, I've got a pretty clean run then, so I'll split them off at that point, and then hopefully see how they go.
I think that's probably just one of the advantages of having an inside flight. Like I have a large inside flight, so I've 128 individual cages, and then I have a large inside flight, so all my flighted birds can go in. So my goal probably most year is to try and fill every single bird cage that I can put a bird in singly, and that's probably where the advantage that I have. Any more questions there, lads, before we wrap up? No. Listen, lads.
No. It's not a question, Paul. It's not a question. It's more of a it's more of a statement, really. And I know you'll thank both of the lads, but the pair of them, you've talked about the conduct, and the pair of them, as having judged both of their birds last year, but having drank with both of them last year as well, although fortunately not in Scotland. I think that the pair of them, I managed to avoid that night. The pair of them are a real credit, and actually the pair of them epitomise. It's a lovely, healthy rivalry between the two of them, but they win and lose with great grace. And the pair of them are, I think, there are many seasoned fanciers who could learn an awful lot from these two chaps, because they do win with grace and they do lose with grace, and that's a credit, I think, to both of them. They've been, last year they were a breath of fresh air on the show bench. So keep it, lads.
In public, lose with grace, Matt. I think it's got to be said there. I might get home and give the cat a good kicking in, but listen.
Yeah, well, that's fine. As long as no one sees the cat getting kicked, Matt, that's fine. You don't want to go all Kurt Zoomer on us, do you? You're in real trouble then.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Right, lads, I'd like to just thank you for coming on. It's been really good. Fair play to Lee. Thanks very much. Fair play to Matt. And thanks for everyone coming on. We've people from all over the place. We had the candles from the Maldives. We had a couple of lads from Spain. We had a couple of lads from Italy. We had lads from Belgium. We've one lad from Waterford in Ireland, John Barrow, who is a world champion with Irish Fancies. He's won several medals at the World Show. He's a really good guy. I know John quite a long time. He's quite shy. He won't come on and say it, but
I was going to say, I think I'm judging with John in Florida later this year.
Yeah, John is judging at the American National. Yeah,
Yeah.
John.
I shall look forward to seeing you then, John.
Yeah, John's a really good guy.
No problem, Matt.
There he is there. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, lads. And until next time, as Matt would say, be safe.
Yeah.
Thanks, lads.
Good night. Cheers, boys.
Okay, lads.
Right.
Easy.
It's actually take care, Paul. But
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
I don't
the
drink tea, so I was going to tell lads to get a cup of, but
the sentiment was there. Cheers, lads.
Yeah.
See you later.
talk to you. Good luck, lads. See you. Good luck.
Bye.
See you later.